What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Week 13 recap slash SEC Championship predictions video of the Vol Fanatics Show. It's been a very short but very fun season. First annual, hopefully, show for the Vol Fanatics is now coming to an end for the football segment, at least. But without further ado, my name's Skylar. My co-host Michael. How we doing, Bubba?
Well, we're both doing all right. We're both getting over a little bit of being under the weather. You texted me, was it Monday or Tuesday, and said, "Man, I just went in. They told me I got strep throat, and man, I started feeling bad later on Monday. I went in yesterday to get a steroid shot for sinus infection. I do feel better today, but you can tell I'm still a little bit stuffy. But man, we're fighting through it. We're feeling some better today. Had an awesome day of football yesterday, so it's a good day today. Good day to talk some football, man.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I'm glad you're feeling better. Monday I was actually feeling it Saturday, but Monday I immediately got tested because we were hosting Thanksgiving. So I'm like, well, I need to get some antibiotics in so I'm not contagious when the family comes over because there was no chance we were canceling that. So, but no, definitely still yakking, but we're making it through, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are getting over it as well. And to everybody out there, man, it's going around, so stay safe.
I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all here, I will be having some cough drops on the show just to make sure that we stick with it here. But you got any shout outs for this past week, man?
Dude, I hate to do this. Like, I don't hate to do this at all, actually. I just don't think he even knows that we're live, or I don't even think he knows about our show. But I've got to shout out a former client of ours. His name is Greg Pounders, and nobody probably knows him, and that's okay. I think he wants it that way. He is a guy that we have actually done a water job for, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 4 times this year. He actually owns a condo in downtown Knoxville. But what's really cool about that relationship and how it's worked out is he's been able to actually gift us parking pass tickets to C8 parking lot. And if true Vol fans that go to the games, they know exactly where lot C8 is and how good of parking that is and how season ticket holders get to have that ticket. Well, he's been gifting it to us all year. It's helped my family be able to come out. My grandparents can't really walk that much due to some injuries, and having his help and him gifting us some passes has really helped us, enjoy the game day atmosphere that much more. So, Greg Pounders, my man, you may never see this episode, but I appreciate you, and you have my shout out of the week. Michael, what say you, man?
I didn't have anybody, shout out for the show or anything, but I'm just going to shout out the family in general, man. We had great Thanksgiving this past week, great family fellowship up at the in-laws. Did that on Thanksgiving Day. It was great family, and actually, I walked in, and I'll kind of give a specific shout out here. So, one of my nephew-in-laws walk into in-laws' house, and when you walk in, it's a brand new house. You walk into the laundry room there, and as soon as you walk through that second door, there's what's going to be my father-in-law's man cave, and had that big 72-inch screen in there. The nephew-in-law had the show on, watching it whenever. So Tristan, if you're watching this, man, shout out to you for having the show on as soon as we walked through the door for Thanksgiving. So,
hey, man, I've seen some folks that actually have had our show on their big screen, and I think that's the coolest thing ever, dude. So, yeah, that's awesome. Shout out to Tristan, man. Appreciate you. But I guess without further ado, man, let's get into the recap. It's Tennessee. They wrapped up the season against their in-state rival Vanderbilt at 3:30 on the SEC network, And, 48-24, not a ton to take away from this game as it was mostly expected. However, it's always great to end on a win. It kind of closes out the 8-4 season, which is very disappointing. However, you look at this season both ways. It could have been better. It also could have been worse, Michael, but without, all that, it is a great way to end the season. Joe Milton had 6 total touchdowns. So let's give praise where it's due. I mean, he's not really been the guy to get us to 10 wins again, but let's be honest, man, Joe Milton's not the worst quarterback in the world. Like we've been treating him. So just kind of want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, he did his job this year for the most part. I mean, he didn't Well, you kind of mentioned it. I mean, he didn't come out and be this quarterback that we were all expecting going into the season. We thought after the glimpses that we saw of him. Um, Shout out to Robert, by the way. Happy Sunday to you, man. Glad that you're tuning in. But anyway, Joe Milton, he going into the season, he was this, expected to be superstar, with the arm and all that, and he never lived up to that hype. But all he did was just enough in most games. Sometimes it wasn't enough to actually get the win for Tennessee, but it was also some other things around him that didn't go right in those games as well. But um, he was comparable all season long for the most part. I mean, I don't have his season stats pulled up in front of me, but I mean, you look at his stats and you're going to take that most years, the stats that he had, and he took care of the ball for the most part. I think he ended up with like 6 interceptions on the season through 12 games. I mean, that's less.
I got your stats right here. He finished the season with 2,813 yards, so just shy of 3,000. He had 20 touchdowns to 5 interceptions with a QBR rating of 70.1.
Okay, so that's comparable right there. I mean, you tell me those stats right off the bat this season. If he was to throw for those stats at the beginning of the season, I say, hey, I'll take that right there. That's a good season right there. And that 5 interception stat, that is less than half an interception per game this year.
Yes, let's not skip over what he did with his legs, even though he didn't do it as much as we wanted him to. I don't know rushing. Here we go. He had 78 carries for just under 300. I mean, he had 299 yards. He had 7 touchdowns on the ground. And so, you're talking 27 total touchdowns on the year. I think you mentioned it. He did just enough, which was what was frustrating about it, is because he never really felt like, other than the Vanderbilt game, that he had that like superstar performance, which is what we really could have used in some games. But you look back at his stats, even in the games that we lose, and it's like, well, he actually did okay, and that's what we kind of said all year. It's like, well, we're not necessarily losing games because of Joe Milton, but we're definitely not winning games because of Joe Milton. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I got you on that. But pulling up here on SEC, I mean, he was right in the middle of the pack overall as far as the quarterbacks. I mean, he was 7th overall when it comes to passing yards. When it comes to completion percentage, I mean, he's sitting at 8th right there. Passing touchdowns, he's sitting at 5th overall in the SEC in passing touchdowns. Interceptions, he's sitting tied at 6th. So, I mean, overall, and let's look at QBR real quick. That was all right. So he's 8th. He was middle of the pack, which everybody said going into the season for Tennessee to be one of the top teams in the SEC, Joe Milton would have to be a top quarterback. But if he played middle of the pack, then Tennessee could still be a decent team for this year. And that's exactly what they were. And you also mentioned it too, that when you look back at the season, 8-4 is a little bit disappointing, especially when you see how the games went. But we'll get into it over the next couple of weeks, because I'd like to go back and look at our preseason predictions and compare them to what happened at the end of the season for each team. And I think a lot of people going into the season, if you said that we're going to go 8-4, you would say, okay, I can make an argument for that and still not be terribly upset. But then you ask people now and they're like, well, yeah, I'm upset because it should have been a whole lot better than that. And I can make an argument for both sides. But before I turn it back over to you here, I do want to give one more shout out. Jalen Wright became the first 1,000-yard rusher since 2015 when Jalen Hurd did it. He rushed for 75 yards yesterday, which put him at 1,013 yards for the season. Shout out to him, man. And I hope he comes back, because he does have another year. But if not, he's made him some money in the NFL this year after the season that he had.
Yeah, man. I actually I had his stats pulled up because that's where I was going to go with the show. Jalen Wright, man. And understand that he had to share the load this year. And he still found a way for his 2023 season stats to be 137 carries. That's it. but he was able to eclipse 1,000 yards with 1,013, and only 4 touchdowns. But guys, he finished the entire 12-game schedule averaging 7.4 yards a run. That's insane. I mean,
and I actually saw this morning from Zach Reagan of A to Z Sports Nashville. So when Jalen Hurd rushed for over 1,000 yards back in 2015, I can't remember. It was either on 227 carries or 277 carries. It was one of those two. And you said Jalen Wright did it in 137?
137 carries. But you got to remember, I mean, Jalen Hurd at the very most was sharing carries with Alvin Kamara. 2 guys. And then, you had John Kelly Jr. come up, at the later end of that. But for the most part, it was a 2 tailback type of system, if not just one. And you've had Jalen Wright not only sharing carries with Jabari Small's entire career, but then this year really sharing the load with Dylan Sampson. And yet he still found a way to eclipse 1,000 yards. It's shocking. It's amazing. I mean, the kid's a generational talent. I am afraid that he is going to go on to the NFL. But if he does come back, that would only excite me even more about next year, even though it's not necessarily jumping all in on the Nico hype. It's more of like I'll go ahead and just talk about it. Cooper Mays didn't even go through senior day activities. What that shows me is, one, he's coming back. You don't just skip senior day activities and then not come back. What shows me that the team is actually starting to buy into maybe that this team may have left a little bit on the table. Ramel Keaton came out and said last night after the game, like, hey, man, 8-4, cool. But that's not at all what our goals or expectations were at the beginning of the year.
No, the beginning of the year was at the bare minimum to win the East. I mean, when Joe Milton bought the entire team Beats headphones, he left a note in there that said, let's go win the East.
Yeah, at the very least, compete for it, right? And so the mindset of this team has changed. We now have a winning mindset, something we haven't had in 15 years, since 2007, really. And so I love to see that change, that culture change, and seeing guys coming back when they could go to the NFL is massive, man. And NIL, I'm sure, is making it a little bit easier, but I think Coop's not necessarily doing it for the money. Coop is doing it because he believes in the Power T, and I think he's got a lot left to prove, him and the team. And so if we can convince some of the guys on defense to stay back, kind of help transition, and also people are not really, it's kind of like a reserved type of mindset when it comes to Nico. They don't want to buy into it because they know he's only a sophomore, or he will be a redshirt freshman technically. But you guys are quick to forget that Bryce Young was a redshirt freshman / sophomore when he came in right after Mac Jones, I believe.
Right, Mac Jones.
So guys, I mean, he's got the size, he's got the talent. Now, if we can just put together the whole team around him, if Brew can come back, and he can, so man, that would be something special. But this is all about this year, this team. We got another bowl game to go win, man, and I'm not sure who we're going to be playing, but I kind of made the joke. I kind of hope it happens. I would love to play Clemson again. They're 8-4 in the ACC, and it's very common for ACC to play SEC. And maybe it's for the Music City Bowl, but we'll be there.
You're right. I don't think it'll be the Music City Bowl though. I think they normally have those for like the 6 and 16s. But I've heard probably the ReliaQuest Bowl used to be the Tax Slayer Bowl out in Florida, so that'd be a good one. It could possibly be North Carolina that we play, somebody like that.
Yeah.
I've also seen, I guess it depends on how Oklahoma State does, but possibly like Oklahoma State, somebody like that. It'll be interesting to see who Tennessee would play in that bowl game. But do you have anything else on Tennessee before we move over to the Vanderbilt side for just a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was there watching the game, obviously unfold, one, I do want to touch on the cheapness there for a little bit. Not that I'm going to make that a point or anything. I had literally nobody mentioned me about football unless it was about Bama losing at the time, or people thought that we paid extra tickets for the UFC fight night because of how bad the end of the second quarter was going for both teams. And I just kind of want to clear the air a little bit, and the fact that it's not a good look for either team. It's not like these teams were 11-1 and 12-0 on top of being in-state rivalries. I mean, we're playing a 2-9 Vanderbilt team. We were 7-4, and yet you've got guys on, quite frankly, both sides of the ball throwing punches. I will say Tennessee was pretty reserved. It might have been a player or two. Vanderbilt, it was like when one guy did it, dude, it was like the whole daggum bench was coming off and that's me at the game, not even knowing what the announcer said, which I think is a little shady that the ex-head football coach for Vanderbilt was one of the game announcers, but whatever, we won't talk about that. But at the end of the day, we needed to play a clean football game and get through the game. But one of the highlights, even though it didn't end up happening, is Nico Iamaleava came in the game and led them down the field. And my dad looks at me. He said, man, put in that senior quarterback that never gets to play and see if he can't get a touchdown. And I'll be dang if they didn't do that, brother. They put in Gaston Moore, who's been with Josh Heupel his entire career from UCF. And quite frankly, I think he had the touchdown. It's not like the ground caused it to drop. I think the Vanderbilt guy kept fighting throughout the process, which even though it was ruled a drop, but I think everybody in the stands counted that as a touchdown for Gaston Moore. Anyways, it was cool to see the whole sideline happy for them, happy for the team. And it just shows that there's a lot more to it than just a scoreboard when it goes into a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, touching on the chippiness and stuff, that was a theme of the whole weekend, not just in the SEC, all over the country. And, I look at it two ways. I love just a little bit of chippiness, do a little smack talk, do just a little bit. But in some of those games, the Tennessee Vanderbilt game being one of them, there's a fine line that you can sit there and go at it.
Ripping off helmets.
Ripping off helmets, Vandy's bench clearing. I mean, that's one thing I did like about Tennessee is you did have some guys come off the sidelines, but for the most part, Tennessee stayed on their sideline. Vanderbilt's entire bench and came out on the field. And that's just too much. You had just about the same thing happen in the Missouri-Arkansas game, and there were punches thrown in that one with ejections. There was other games that there was chippiness as well. And it's rivalry week. I understand. And like I said, I love a little bit of that chippiness, but don't let it go too far. And that's kind of what happened in that Tennessee Vanderbilt game. Some of it went too far.
Well, and that's the blame on the referees. They should have got control of that very early in the game, and they kind of didn't. There was a late hit where we hit the quarterback, but nobody really knew it was a dead ball play. Everybody thought it was offsides and that you typically play the play out. Mm-hmm. I don't know why there was only one referee blowing a whistle, which is why they didn't hear it. But I went back and watched the replay. I mean, the quarterback clearly knew that the play was dead, and nobody else did. The entire defense was playing the game. So I do feel for Clark Lee, and I want to credit Vanderbilt for not backing down. I mean, of course they were getting their butt beat, in the game. But when it come to taking up for players, man, Vanderbilt wasn't going to shy away from stepping up to the plate. So, credit to them. That is the most fight I've seen out of that team all year. So, for whatever that's worth. But, yeah, overall, big game. I do want to ask you, as far as quarterbacks go, was that the perfect farewell for Joe Milton, or do you think he plays in the bowl game? Does he do the crowd a favor, per se, and opt out and let Nico kind of take over, kind of like he did last year? Because he's already got the bowl win. He's got a New Year's Six bowl win. So, technically, that bowl win is way better than whatever they're going to go playing in this year. And he had a great game in it. So does he prepare for the draft now, or does he want to play one more game with the boys?
So I'm glad that you brought that up. We both listened to the Eric Ainge show on 99.1 out of Knoxville. They had a conversation about that this past week, and I've kind of been saying all along that I think Joe sticks with his team and plays in this bowl game. He finishes off his career in Knoxville with a bowl win, hopefully. But Brian Rice made a good point on the show this past week. He said, unless you are a top 10 draft pick. No, let me back up. Sorry. He said, unless you are playing for a BCS playoff game, if you are a quarterback that still has something to prove, you need to go ahead and try to prepare for the draft and get your draft stock up some, which is the situation that Joe Milton is in right now. He's not going to be playing for a playoff game. He needs to do what he can in that draft process to try to, help build his stock a little bit. Because right now, I do think that he will get drafted, but it's going to be in the mid to late rounds. based on what he put together on the field this year. But his overall athletic ability, he's just as athletic, if not more athletic, along with his arm strength than Anthony Richardson was, who went third overall last year. So I think Joe Milton would be doing himself a favor to go ahead and go to the draft. And I would be happy for him if he did that. If he decided to come back for a bowl game, I'd be happy for that too. But as a Vol fan going forward, I think I would like to see him go ahead and go to the draft. Go ahead and let Nico come in and take the snaps in the bowl game, get him prepared for next year. But also, to go along with that, I think it would look really good for Tennessee recruiting wise going forward if you see 2 years in a row Tennessee has got a quarterback being drafted. So I think that he needs to go ahead and prepare for the draft and let his best game in a Tennessee uniform be that Vanderbilt game to finish off his career. I think you go out on a high note.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you really focus for the combine. I mean, that's what he really needs to focus on, because that's when you're going to have the scouts there. You need to start preparing for pro day in the spring. Whatever he needs to do. But to your point about the whole recruiting process, man, I think they're already starting to see that. You got Jake Merklinger. So you had Nico that's in the boat right now that's about to take over your team. You got Jake Merklinger that's in the boat that's about to come in December, I think. And then you've got a 2025 guy, 5-star, and George McIntyre. And if you can put together 3 of those dudes to where you can have some back, how often in the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you don't even have a 2 deep really at quarterback. And now you're about to have a 3 deep out of this world next season when you get George McIntyre in for the 2025 year. That's something that Tennessee's not really had the luxury of having. And so if that'll be, if Nico has the career that we all think he can, you're talking at this case, you're putting 3 back-to-back starters of your team in the NFL. And now it's starting to feed itself. So this is something that we've not seen out of Tennessee. And quite honestly, ever, if that were to be the case, I mean, we're lucky to get a guy into the NFL. I mean, Josh Dobbs went in the NFL 8 years ago, and he's finally getting a chance and an opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it. Don't get me wrong. But, and you see how much Tennessee fans, they follow our guys when they go to the league. I'm not a big NFL guy myself, but by God, you best be believing I'm watching Jalen Hyde for the Giants finally show up. I'm watching Josh Dobbs tomorrow, Jawan Jennings with the San Francisco 49ers. Hell, I watched Trey Smith block for Kansas City in the Super Bowl. Like, I'm going to follow my guys. That's who I am. And so maybe that just goes more into the passionate fan base. And that's we control a lot more than I think even though I know we know that we control a lot, but just our love and our passion for the players and for the team and our university, it's going to attract its own fair share of guys anyways, regardless. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's swap it over to Vanderbilt because we got several more games to talk about, and we spent about 20 minutes already on this. So yeah, Vanderbilt, though, it was nice to see AJ Swan come back. Because I do feel like he was the QB1. He made some great plays. They moved the ball on Tennessee. Like, let's be honest. But once again, offensive line didn't really help him. He got hit a lot. James Pierce Jr. was everywhere. Tyler Barron decided to have his game. I think he kind of understood that it was his last game in Neyland. Eventually he got hit out of the game, I think late in the third, maybe early in the fourth, which I hated to see that. Never want to see anybody get hurt. But, what are your thoughts, I guess, overall of Vanderbilt's attack?
Yeah, so but before I mention that, Robert, he says, you're a Vandy player, wouldn't you be ticked off every single week? I mean, you lose every single week, can't win a single SEC game. You're the punching bag in the conference. And yeah, I say you're right there, Robert. I mean, I would be mad too because, I was high on Vanderbilt coming into the season. I felt like that Clark Lee had this team moving in the right direction after last year. But I think that you kind of moved it, or you kind of said it earlier this year that they were benefiting last year off of an SEC that was a little bit weaker in the East. You picked up a few wins that you probably wouldn't have in a normal year. Like, you beat Kentucky, you beat Missouri, you beat Florida. You picked up 3 SEC wins last year. But I still felt that they had something cooking. And I think that when you look at the way that the offense played yesterday against Tennessee, that offense is almost there. They just need a line to help block for the quarterbacks. Now, defense, they've got a long way to go. I mean, they have gotten burned all year long on defense. So there's a lot to fix there, but I don't think they're too far away on offense from competing. And, you said it. They moved the ball on Tennessee yesterday. They do need a little bit more of a running game. They only ran for 78 yards. Cedric Alexander was the highest rusher, 11 carries, 46 yards. But, AJ Swan did his job out there. Ken Seals came in after AJ Swan went down. He did his job, and I understand getting those guys their playing time because they've done it for you all year. They're upperclassmen, but I still say, man, I think that Vanderbilt should have gone with Walter Taylor. That freshman quarterback, dude is 6'7", 240 pounds. I mean, the games that he has played in, he's done well. I know he's only got like this much of the playbook where Ken Seals and AJ Swan, they've got the whole playbook that they can play from. But I've said it for the past month that Vanderbilt did not have anything to play for here at the beginning of the season other than pride. Go ahead and get your guy ready for next year. I was disappointed that he didn't get his playing time yesterday.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm glad you brought that up. In the pregame warmups, he passes the eye test, bro. I mean, he kind of like mirror image of like Joe Milton when they were warming up, and I'm like, holy crap! You got what was his name? Number 2. His number is number 2. That's the quarterback that you just said. Walter Taylor. Thank you. You got him that's warming up, and he's like here, right? And then you see AJ Swan here, and then you see Kenny Seals here. And I'm like, dude, how has he not seen the field? And I mean, I know he has a little bit, but I wonder how many games he's actually played in because I've not followed Vanderbilt. Maybe they're keeping him as a redshirt, just so that he has more time with Vanderbilt because – yeah, I think I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. They knew that this was their last game of the year. They were down 45-10, 45-17 after the muff punt. Why not give him a chance just to kind of see what they're going to look like going forward? Because that dude he passes the eye test.
Yeah,
100%.
He's done well this year. Like I said, he doesn't have much of the playbook because they first brought him in the Ole Miss game earlier this year, but they brought him in earlier than they wanted to. The plan all along was to bring him in that game, but AJ Swan was hurt at that time, and then Ken Seals went down towards the beginning of the game, so they had to bring him in earlier than they wanted to, and he had a very short amount of plays that he was able to run at that time because that's all they planned for. So yeah. I know that his part of the playbook is less than the other two, but I still think I'm going to continue to say they should have went ahead and had him in there, getting his time, getting his experience, because by that point in the season, that Ole Miss game, there was nothing left to play for. And I get your point there. You maybe want to limit his time to preserve that red shirt. But, I mean, at that point in the year, man, I don't know how much that would have mattered.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, that's why Nico didn't play against Georgia, because now you could play Nico in that game yesterday. You can play him in the bowl game because bowl game doesn't matter when it comes to red shirt. It's just 4 regular season games. And so it's official. Nico next year will be a redshirt freshman. He will not be a sophomore. So that maybe that's why I brought that up. So I didn't know, but Taylor, number 2 for Vanderbilt. If y'all haven't seen him this year, I would go ahead and say remember it because he could have a breakout season next year and maybe get Vanderbilt to a bowl game. I'm not calling that next year, but maybe in his tenure there, get Vanderbilt to a bowl game for the first time since 2015, 14. I don't know. When's the last time they won 6 games? I don't even know. It's been forever now. But that's to Robert's point. I mean, you almost go into a season knowing that you're just a punching bag. But last year, I think you had teams that stopped believing or maybe even gave up, like Florida, like Kentucky, that's how they were able to jump. And credit to Vanderbilt, they were there, they were ready to play the game. But yeah, I'm just hoping Clark Lee gets another year or 2 to kind of put together some recruiting classes to see what they can do. But man, we got a lot of games to talk about. So if you don't mind, we're going to jump straight to the Thanksgiving night shootout or not. More of like a defensive standout, man. It was Ole Miss versus Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. I kind of seen this one coming. I thought it was going to be ugly, but Ole Miss gets the win 17-7, and very much a defensive battle. What say you? What is your initial reactions? Ole Miss gets the 10 wins again under Lane Kiffin.
So I want to shout out Jordan Rogers. He was one of the broadcasters on the game, and he said, we've all been eating our Thanksgiving meal today, and we're all ready for a nap, but we're going to just fight through it because we know that this Egg Bowl tonight, it's going to be exciting. It's going to keep us awake. And he said, it's just not doing it.
It's just not doing it.
If he wasn't right, it wasn't really doing it. But, you kind of mentioned it. This is one of those old school battles that I love seeing. I love seeing a good defensive matchup. And
where field position matters, right?
Yeah. I mean, I want to take it over to high school football for a minute. That's what I love about watching my Cornville Bulldogs play is, they pride themselves on defense down here. And so do a lot of other teams. I mean, Richland did too. You got Moore County, schools around this area where we grew up, they're all about defense. And we see those games on a nightly basis on Friday nights. And to see it on the Saturday games, and this one being a Thursday night game, it's really fun to see. I know a lot of people, they love the outstanding offenses, but man, I like a good defensive battle, and that's what this one was. Jackson Dart probably had his worst game of the year. I know he's still battling a shoulder injury as well that he suffered in that Georgia game, but
he didn't even get 100 yards, man.
He did not, but he also ran the ball though, and he did it comparably. He had 8 carries for 30 yards. But that's where Ole Miss won the game, was on the ground. Quinshon Judkins, 28 carries, 119 yards in the tutty. It was one of those games that was going to be hard for Mississippi State to win, but they kept it close, which is what they needed to do. Both defenses played very well in this game.
No, absolutely. And, man, we're going to talk about winners because, they deserve it. They won. So we talk about winners first on the show. And, man, Ole Miss has a stable running back. I mean, they don't just have Quinshon Judkins. I mean, that Bentley the 4 kid, they're going to be just fine.
Both of them are going to be back next year because Quinshon Judkins is just a sophomore this year, so he's got one more year before he's drafted.
Yeah, he's not even eligible. Exactly, he's not even eligible for the draft. So I mean, they're going to be just fine to help out whoever is going to be the quarterback there next year. I think Jackson Dart still has another year.
He still does. I know Spencer Sanders is gone because he's a graduate transfer. This was his 1 year that he had a chance to be there. And then they've also got a guy that transferred from LSU behind Jackson Dart. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, but he's pretty talented as well. So, and I don't know about the wide receivers for Ole Miss, but I'm sure some of them can still come back. So I don't see, as long as Lane Kiffin stays, which I believe he will right now at this point at Ole Miss.
I don't A&M.
You think he's going to A&M?
No, I'm joking. No, I do want to point out something that Robert says because he has a very good question. And one, he was surprised that they only scored 17, which I think everybody is. But, do you think with Ole Miss and Missouri being 10-2, do they both get New Year's 6 bids? Because I think they typically only take that third or top 3 in the SEC for New Year's 6s. I think, honestly, a lot of it hinges on what Bama and Georgia does next week.
I would say no, Ole Miss does not. I think Missouri
gets it.
I think Missouri locked up their New Year's 6 bid after the trouncing of Arkansas.
I disagree. With that.
Okay. I'm happy to hear this, man.
Look, Ole Miss has only lost to Bama and Georgia.
And that's a fair point there. That is a very fair point.
So Missouri lost to Georgia.
Missouri lost to Georgia and LSU. And I know LSU isn't Alabama, but at that time, LSU was still a good team.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You look at wins more than losses. So, I mean, I guess that's where Missouri kind of passes them. But, it's hard, man. Ole Miss literally played Tennessee's schedule pretty much. Like, I'm going to just say it like that because they played Bama, Georgia, and they couldn't beat them. But they beat everybody else on their schedule. And I don't know. That it's a very tight race between Ole Miss and Missouri. I think you're right. I think everybody's fallen in love with the Cinderella story of the running back there. God, I can't believe it. I forgot his name. Cody Schrader. Thank you. And rightfully so. I'm not going to say he's Heisman worthy. I think he should be talked about, but just unfortunately, he's not done enough as a running back all season, I think, to be included in the Heisman. And but he definitely should be talked about.
I've got one now I think that you would agree with. I think that he should be the Maxwell Award winner, or at least be in
100%. Yeah, he's the best running back in the SEC. In my mind, that means you're the best running back in the nation. And that's why I'm saying he should be talked about in the Heisman. The problem is he's really came on late. And he didn't, I mean, he did great in the beginning of the season, don't get me wrong, but he just wasn't taking over ball games like he did the last 3-4 of the regular season. But, you know, to me, I think Heisman is just the best player in college football. I don't know if I can say that about him this year, even though he's the greatest back, right, in the SEC this year statistically, and honestly with heart and the passion that he plays with. Like, I don't want anybody to get it twisted. He's a damn good running back. I just can't look at him and say he's the best college football player this year.
Yeah,
I just can't. I agree. I'm sorry.
But to make my point as well, I think that it's Missouri getting the New Year's Six bid, also because of the way that they played against those teams and their losses. Because Ole Miss against Alabama, yeah, it was competitive, but Ole Miss really didn't have anything going for them in that game. And then in the Georgia game, they were competitive for a half, and then the second half, Georgia blew them out. Missouri.
Yeah, I think if Missouri plays Ole Miss today, Missouri wins.
Yes.
And so then, yeah, Missouri should get them. But I just think it's tough to punish a team that had to play the two toughest teams in the conference.
And that's a fair point. So, I mean, I really don't know, but I'm going to go with Missouri getting that New Year's Six bid over Ole Miss. You know, you said you're going to take Ole Miss getting that bid over Missouri.
No. I think Missouri gets the bid.
Yeah.
I just think, I don't know, resume-wise, it's hard to not take Ole Miss, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see, and I would love to see, you know, Georgia, Alabama, whoever get in the playoffs and then have 3 SEC teams in a New Year's Six bowl, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah. And it's tough, man. It's crazy, the SEC, man. So you've got a 12-0 Georgia team, 11-1 Bama team. You got 10-2 Ole Miss and Missouri teams, and then a 9-3 LSU team. Dude, I mean, Pac-12, I would say probably is the second best as far as like multiple teams at the top. Yeah. But man, I think it's safe to say SEC is still the standard, dude. Like, it is not even close.
Exactly. I mean, I've had people all year long say, man, SEC is weak. They're the worst Power 5 conference. I'm like, dude, your homework. I mean, it's obvious that the SEC is the standard. They are the best team. They're the best conference overall. Now, it might not look that way when you look at some of the bottom teams or even the middle teams, but when you just take the overall conference, it's obvious that the SEC is the best conference in the nation.
Well, and we'll get to these games, but, you know, Kentucky, which is, what, 4th place in the SEC East, just beat ACC's championship contending.
Yeah, the number 2 team in ACC.
They're literally playing the ACC championship, and Kentucky beat them. And I'm just like, yeah, that goes to prove our point a little bit, and we'll talk about some later games. But do you have anything else on the Egg Bowl, man? It's a big win for Lane Kiffin. He even mentioned that he really misses Mike Leach, but even though you never like to lose, it almost felt like he was supposed to lose last year, and what would have actually been Mike Leach's final game that he was on the sideline.
Yeah, it all played out the way that it was supposed to. I mean, I hate that the situation happened the way that it did, but last year played out the way that it needed to. It was, I guess you would say, the storybook ending for Mike Leach. I mean, I know that, you know, the situation that happened afterwards was not good, but for him to win his final game being in the Egg Bowl before he passed away, that's the way that it should have ended. But I do think that Mississippi State, just to close out the Egg Bowl, I think that they've got a brighter future coming. It could take another year or two, but it's all going to depend on who they get in as head coach. I think that they've got the guys there that they can do it, and that defense is decent. You've got
Dan Moore, maybe.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know if he'll actually come back because he's got a lot of money right now. I think he's happy where he's at on TV. But that name is going to.
He needs Dak Prescott to come back with him, baby.
But I think Mississippi State, they've got brighter days coming ahead. It's still going to be a long road, but they fought in this game, and that's what I wanted to see from them. After the firing of Zach Arnett, they fought in that Egg Bowl, and they did exactly what they needed to.
I didn't understand the interim coach's statement when he said it's a lesson when he came out on a quad. I don't really understand that, but hey, he brought the energy, and I'm all for it. But I don't know. I don't know if his explanation was on point there on the question. I don't know if he really ever answered it, but by any means,
I don't remember the whole thing, and we don't have time to talk about it on here. If I did,
no.
But basically, Inky Johnson actually came down and talked to the team, and
Okay.
Something was said about a golf cart from Inky Johnson, so they took it and did a four-wheeler, because most of the team had they've been on four-wheelers before in their life, and so
Right.
they used that as whatever kind of point that Inky Johnson made in his story whenever he come down and talked to Mississippi State.
So what you're telling me is Tennessee is building everybody, dude. It's crazy.
It's exactly right. So.
No, I'm joking. All right, let's move on along. Missouri just throttled Arkansas, man, in the noon o'clock game. Or was this Friday night?
This was Friday night.
This was Friday night, yeah. Missouri throttled Arkansas 48-14. This was very much expected. KJ Jefferson, though, man, when they were competitive, I will say, for a little bit. But when KJ Jefferson got hurt, and then Missouri went and scored that very next possession, it just kind of felt like, all right, here we go. And you never want to see anybody get hurt, especially the way he did. I think his knee got hyperextended. That hip drop tackle, man, we've been talking about it for a long time. It is causing more injuries than a concussion ever has, and injuries that you don't necessarily come back after a week or two. Like a concussion, you can. Something probably does need to be done. I hate taking away from the defense, because at the end of the day, it's not their job to protect a player. I mean, they're trying to get a guy down. But I am for the safety of the players, of the kids, and the hip drop tackle when it's done on purpose. I can't think of the right word. Intentionally. There we go. When it's done intentionally, and you know when it's done intentionally, because they'll pick up their legs and actually sit on their legs. That's going to be something that needs to be talked about. It's the NCAA, so I don't think they ever will. But I do want to try to keep these players safe, man. We've been seeing it way too often lately. But regardless, Cody Schrader, I just talked about how he wasn't the best player in the league, but he doesn't care what I think. He ran the ball for 27 times, 217 yards, a touchdown. He really is one of the best backs in the nation, man.
Yeah, and he finished off the year just shy of 1,500 yards rushing. That is over 300 yards more than the second place player, who is actually a quarterback in Jaden Daniels. But man, and he actually had 190 yards, I believe it was, at the end of the first half. Like he didn't run very much. I don't really think he played very much in the second half of that ball game. But Missouri just did what they needed to in this game. I did not realize how bad this was. So Arkansas actually fumbled the ball 6 times and lost 5 of them in this game, which that also helped out Missouri's case, because when you look at the total yards,
they don't have a lot. Yeah, it's all Cody Schrader.
It was all Cody Schrader. I mean, they had Missouri had 370 total yards to Arkansas's 225. So you take that stat right there, you're like, okay, this is a pretty close ball game, probably low scoring. And then you look, and Missouri has got 48 on the board, and you're like, where did all this come from? That, as Josh Pate would say, padlock stat, 5 turnovers for Arkansas. That is the difference in the ball game right there, giving Missouri short field, and Missouri took advantage of it. I mean, Missouri, I know they were tops in the conference. I think they might be tops in the nation in red zone scoring percentage. Now, not all of those are touchdowns, but they're kicking field goals as well. But, I mean, they're definitely top 5 in the nation. I know they're the top in the conference when it comes to red zone scoring percentage.
Death, taxes, and turnovers. It costs teams every time, man. Hardly ever does a team that loses a turnover battle, even if it's about one, it's hardly ever do you lose a turnover battle and win the game, especially win the game handedly. So It's unfortunate. I think Arkansas, I don't think they really laid down. I think they fought very hard. In fact, I know they didn't lay down. They scored 14 in the fourth quarter. I mean, they, you know, for what it's worth, they're 4-8. They're 1-7 in the ACC. They did announce that Sam Pittman's staying. I think that's huge. I think that's very big. The confidence now, and far as recruiting and finishing out the class, you as a coach can tell your kids, "Hey, I'm here. Like, commit to me. Let's turn this thing around next year, and we're all good. We're all golden." But I promise you, if he misses a bowl next year, he's not going to be there.
No, and one thing I liked when they talked about this in the game when the AD announced that he was going to be there next year, the players and all that in the locker room, they just pounded Sam Pittman. They were so happy that he was going to be their coach next year. So they have bought into him. I think it was just some bad luck on Arkansas' side this year with injuries and the scheduling, just the way that things went this year. It was some bad luck. I think they're bought into Sam Pittman, but you're 100% correct. If he misses a bowl next year, he's gone. He's on the hot seat to start the year next year.
Well, and it could be two different things. Not that I've ever been in a locker room at that level. Just make sure that he is a good coach and not just a good relationship kind of guy. They could be happy because they're just best friends with a guy and they're having a good time at practice and stuff like that. It better not be like
after practice. So
exactly right. Like, you want to make sure that Sam Pittman's actually the guy. But for any rate, and me and you discussed this, like, yeah, the seat's warm, but we don't feel like he should be fired yet. I mean, he took over that Arkansas program at a very low, and I think he's just really not benefiting from the success that he had. In fact, it's actually kind of the opposite. It's made it worse on them because now they had that taste of that 9-win season. And, that's why this 4-win season hurts so much. Yeah. But, really, it's just a reset thing. Get a good quarterback in after KJ, because I think, unfortunately, his career is done at Arkansas, which is why I really hate that he got hurt in the game. But, hopefully they can get back on the right track, go bowling next year, secure everything. And I'm all about stability. That's why I don't want anything to happen with Josh Heupel, even though we had some would say disappointing year this year. And I think there will be changes that need to happen. But if somebody, on God, like if next year we go 7-5 or 6-6 and somebody says toss Josh Heupel, I'm going to be so pissed, dude. And I'm going to be probably that guy saying it because I just feel like I need to be competitive, or we should be competitive. But at the end of the day, swapping coaches every 3 to 4 years, it sucks, dude. It's not fun because then you just know it's just a complete reset. You're going to lose 17,000 guys to the portal. And, I think that alone is going to save Arkansas for next year in hopes of making a bowl game. So, but big win for Missouri. I think they do, like we've mentioned, they lock up the bid for a New Year's Six. I think, though, that is unfortunately going to block out Ole Miss, even though you got 4 teams very willing or very capable of being in the New Year's Six. They're just not going to take 4 teams, because Georgia's going to be in the playoff. If not, then we've got massive chaos. And then you got Alabama and Missouri in the New Year's Six. So
yeah, and I want to touch on a couple of things Robert said here. I do agree with him. I think when it comes to ratings this year, that they'll choose Mizzou over Ole Miss just because the Cinderella aspect of it, Mizzou, and they're so fun to watch too. And then he also mentioned this right here. Until this season, nobody knew who Cody Schrader was. I mean, he started off in D2, and I did not realize this. So he actually walked on originally at Missouri and earned a scholarship this year. So he's actually in the running to win the Burlsworth Trophy this year. Robert asked, will he be drafted to the NFL? He's not exactly a big guy, but he's quick. I think that he will get drafted, and I think that he will do very well in the NFL because he's a guy
he's going to the NFL.
Yeah, he's going to the NFL. I'm trying to find somebody to kind of compare him to. I guess you would almost say a Christian McCaffrey as far as, what he can do, running the ball and catching the ball out of the backfield, just the overall player that he is. I think that's Cody Schrader. So I think that will give him success in the NFL at the next level.
Yeah, he'll be in the NFL. There's going to be a team out there that can utilize him. He's very good out of the backfield too. Like he's a utility guy, and he'll run somebody over. Don't count out a size. I mean, he will absolutely punish somebody. I'm trying to think of the player that was really good. It's not Jamal Lewis. I mean, he was good, but he was a little bit bigger. There's a player out there that I can't think of, but he reminds me a lot of him, and I think he'll be fine in the NFL. I really do.
Let's move on to the next one because we are spending a lot of time here, but this one kind of shocked us a little bit. You got Kentucky over Louisville, and you mentioned it earlier. Kentucky's sitting about 4th, 5th, somewhere like that in the SEC East. Just beat a team that's playing for the ACC championship this weekend. And we talked last week off the air, the SEC could have very well gone 1-3 this past weekend against the ACC just because of the matchups that were being played. But we were trying to find that one game that we thought, maybe an SEC team could beat an ACC team. We chose 2 of the other games. We didn't choose this one, and we got it wrong. But shout out to Kentucky, man. I mean, Kentucky, they played their tails off. They won the game because of every single aspect. Devin Leary played his game yesterday. He wasn't fantastic, but he did his job. Ray Davis was on another level as he normally is, catching the ball and running the ball. And Kentucky also did their stuff on special teams as well, and that's where the game was won and lost overall. I mean, you look at the total yards there, Louisville had 403 and Kentucky had 289. So you think there, man, Louisville won this ball game. Not to mention Louisville was 9 of 17 on 3rd down and 3 of 4 on 4th down. So you would think, man, Louisville won this ball game and probably won it by 2 scores, but Kentucky came out on top here by 7.
No, and let me tell you why. Because they won on every phase. They needed a complete game from all 3 phases, complementary football to win a game, especially when you're the underdog like they were, and they did it. Look, at one point in the 3rd quarter, Louisville was up 17-7. Kentucky didn't budge, dude. They instead returned the very next kickoff. Barryon Brown, 100 yards to the house to bring it back within 3. And then, you had interceptions. Defense was creating turnovers. Jack Plummer he had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now, Devin Leary did throw his interception as well. But, man, you had defense step up when they needed to step up. And that's how you created a 4th quarter where you outscore them 17-7. And a 3rd quarter that you kind of thought, man, defense took a nap, each team scoring 2 touchdowns. But again, that was because of that touchdown kickoff return, excuse me. And what truly it's just a rivalry game. I mean, you see the unexpected in rivalry games, and we're going to talk about that a little later. Because, man, it's crazy what these type of atmospheres bring, what type of competition that this all brings out in rivalry week, and you wish you could get something like this every week, but I think if we did that, then this wouldn't be as special as it is. And I just hope that with all the realignment crap that's going on, we can actually keep a weekend like this still alive. So
I agree with you. And I thought you were going to bring it up here, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. All those points scored in the second half. There was 17 combined points scored in the first half and 52 combined in the second half. So, yeah. I mean, the teams just woke up in the second half. But we also mentioned it earlier, the turnover battle, a lot of times that's where the game is won and lost. And Kentucky had 1, Louisville had 3. So, once again, you look at that's a point where the game was won and lost as well. And, Kentucky took advantage of it. Louisville's still a very good ball team. But Kentucky just did enough to win the ball game. I mean, but Ray Davis, man, he's another one of those guys that he's going to have a career in the NFL. Might not be a star, but because of his versatility, he's going to have a team, find a spot for him. Yesterday, he carried the ball 14 times for 76 yards and scored a touchdown. He also caught the ball 4 times yesterday for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Ray Davis yesterday with 3 total touchdowns on the day.
He had a game. Ray Davis, when it kind of seems like when he's clicking, Kentucky wins, which has really helped him out, or really helped Kentucky out, because they kind of thought Devin Leary would be that guy. Unfortunately, Devin Leary's really not lived up to that, but Ray Davis has kind of stepped up. And this is a win that Kentucky really needed. I mean, to beat your in-state rival, you now have those bragging rights to end the year. You don't really have the record you wanted to have, but it's not as ugly as it's been. You finished 7-5. There's been some speculation that your head coach is leaving, but I think that's all false. I think head coach Stoops is going to stay in Kentucky. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he would be dumb to leave Kentucky, in my opinion. He's one of the highest paid, safest coach. Literally, he can go 7-5 and not be on the hot seat whatsoever. So, I mean, if he left, it's true. It's truly because Stoops wants to win a championship, but I don't think he wants that. Yeah, I think he's there. I think he's there to get paid and go and be average. You know what I mean?
And also, I know that it's not a big record difference, but how big is it to be 7-5 instead of 6-6? I mean,
it's massive.
Just that right there alone, it's not a big record difference, but it looks a whole lot better when you see it on paper. Going 6-6, I mean, that's saying, hey, we were just good enough to get this bowl game right here. Where 7-5, okay, you there was a little bit of leeway there. I know that's not great, but also you're not sitting at 500 either. So he really needed that win yesterday. And just one more shout out to Ray Davis. I'm not sure where he played before Vanderbilt, but I believe he becomes he becomes the first player in FBS history to rush for 1,000 yards at 3 different schools. So he did Vanderbilt, did it at Kentucky this year, and wherever he played before Vanderbilt, he did it there as well.
Yeah, he's a dog. He'll make some money in the next chapter of his life for sure. But let's keep this thing rolling, man. A&M, without a head coach, put up a fight against LSU. Unfortunately, defenses decided to take a nap in this game, that's not surprising when you're playing LSU. They don't have a defense. But A&M, man, they kind of put a scare on LSU, but LSU had a crazy second half to seal the win. I kind of seen this effort coming out of A&M. They've got the talent to play with anybody in the country. They just not had the right leadership and the right coaching staff to put them in the best position that they need to be in. And they've had the money to do it, and that's how they got the guys there. They've just not been able to, obviously get over the hump. And I'm not saying that whoever's the interim coach there now is that guy, but I'm saying, like, this is why you're seeing an inspired effort from a bunch of guys that, in other words, you would think would kind of just give up on the season. But Jaden Daniels, that dude, probably your Heisman finalist for sure, maybe even Heisman player of the year. I mean, he didn't even have a great game. It just ended up being great. 16-24, 235 yards, 4 touchdowns. And I believe he might have he did not run for a touchdown, but he ran for another 120 yards. Yeah. I mean, dude, what he's doing with his legs and his arm in every game is quite unheard of. And he's doing it against some of the best defenses. A&M has a really good defense. He should not have been able to do that, but he did.
Yep, you're 100% correct there. And I want to, since we're still talking about Texas A&M, Robert brought up this question on the text box here. With all the rumors about Stoops going to Texas A&M, do you think he was going to College Station if they lost to Louisville? And did he change his mind when he won and his record at Kentucky looks better than 7-5? So
can I go ahead and answer? Can I go ahead and answer that?
Let's go ahead.
See, I think there was I don't think there was ever a doubt. If he were to lose a job where he's getting paid $9 million a year to finish 7-5 and put that on the line to have all that pressure at A&M to go, if he went 7-5 at A&M, dude, oh my God, he's fired immediately. I'm saying, like, he would be so stupid to chase maybe $3 or $4 million a year than what he's getting paid now at Kentucky just for him to get fired in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, he's got a safe job at Kentucky where he can go 7-5 and not risk losing his job. And like you mentioned, he's still making $9 million to do it. So I agree with you. I think that he would be stupid to leave Kentucky where the pressure isn't what it is at Texas A&M. I don't believe he's going to leave Kentucky. I think the only way that he leaves is if he sees the writing on the wall and he gets out of there before they can fire him.
See, and that's what and maybe that's where he's going with. Maybe his seat does get warm if he finishes 6-6. And let's be honest, that Tennessee loss made him look really bad this year, which I don't understand that, really. He's lost to Tennessee a lot. I don't know why this year him losing to Tennessee was totally different, but I guess because it was at their place. I don't know, but maybe if he goes 6-6, his seat's a little warm, and then if he leaves, it's on his terms because he kind of thinks that he's probably going to be out at Kentucky regardless. But man, I just don't see it. Kentucky is so content. Their staff is so content going 8-4 every year that's why they're paying him to stay there. It's weird because every now and again they'll get their 10-win season and then he'll get praised for it. But let's be honest, if he has a 10-win season at A&M, that's kind of like but we didn't win the West. Like, what the hell? Yeah. So I just think he would be dumb to leave the situation he's in now.
Yeah,
so
I agree. But going back to this game, so I mentioned it earlier in the year. Texas A&M does a fantastic job of making teams play to the game that they want to. And for 3 quarters, that is exactly what happened in this game. Texas A&M made LSU play to their pace. I mean, the ending time of possession here was A&M had the ball for 36 minutes and 39 seconds. LSU had it for 23 minutes and 21 seconds. And a lot of that time was in the fourth quarter whenever LSU, they started slowing the game down just a little bit once they got that lead. At one time, I want to think Texas A&M had the ball for 24 minutes and LSU had it for less than 10. I mean, Texas A&M did exactly what they wanted to in that game. And I'm going to pull up real quick the drive for drives that Texas A&M had, because they were long drives, especially their scoring drives that they went on.
Yeah, I got you. It's their very first scoring drive was 17 plays where they traveled 64 yards and 9 minutes of play. And then they scored 3 the very next drive, I believe, where they went 9 plays for 4 minutes. Let's see. They scored a touchdown on a 13-play drive to end this. They had a 17-point second quarter, dude. And that third drive where they got the touchdown right before the half was 13 plays, 78 yards in 4 minutes and 45. So you literally have almost 17 to 18 minutes of the clock. You know what I mean? You got a 9-minute drive, a 4-minute drive, a 4.5-minute drive. That's to your point. You're keeping Jayden Daniels and LSU off the field, and you're getting points out of this. It's not like you're just wasting time. I mean, you're putting together methodical drives, and that's exactly what they needed to keep doing in the third and fourth quarter, which they didn't do terrible. They came out in the third quarter, right out of half. You talk about winning the middle 8. A&M did that. A&M did that and still couldn't find a way. They literally got the ball first, I believe, went 7 plays in just under 4 minutes and scored a touchdown.
Yep.
And I mean, LSU just answered right back and then just kind of didn't stop answering at that point.
This is where the momentum shifted right here. You mentioned it that Texas A&M took the ball right out of halftime, went down the field and scored. LSU got the ball. They went down and scored. Texas A&M went on another 13-play, 49-yard drive, taking 6.5 minutes on the clock, but they missed the field goal. And when that happened, LSU got it, and they actually went 3 and out on that next possession. But then Texas A&M threw an interception, and from there, it was all LSU.
Yep. Big win for the Tigers, man. They got their 9th win. It kind of covers up what was kind of a disappointing season for LSU. I mean, they obviously, after Brian Kelly won the West, they wanted to do it again. But 9-3, that Ole Miss loss hurts. I know it does. But losing to Florida State to Jordan Travis, that's kind of excused at this point with them having an unbelievable season. I mean, they finished 12-0, and you also lose to Bama, which went 11-1. Tough schedule, which everybody does. It's the SEC. Welcome to it. But big year, 9-3. Brian Kelly's here to stay. I think he's going to have LSU in the top 15 every year. I mean, this is going to be a new normal. LSU's praying for that 12-team playoff because they're going to be in it almost every year. So big way to end the season, and way to not kind of fall asleep on the last game of the season against the A&M, because that'd have been a very ugly loss. Let's just be honest. And they controlled that, didn't let it happen, got the big win, and I think we're going to move on to the Iron Bowl.
So I want to throw both of us a bone right here, because we did not mention it on the live last week.
No.
You go back to previous shows this year and even just us talking off the air, and I mentioned it off the air before we started last week. Strange things happen in the Iron Bowl when it's being played at Jordan-Hare, no matter how good either of these teams are. And I mentioned last week that Auburn lost to New Mexico State the week before, which was a game that Hugh Freeze should not have lost.
Hell no.
And I said, or I asked you the question, has Auburn won a game this year? Has Hugh Freeze won a game this year that he was not supposed to? You thought for a minute, you said, no, he hadn't. And all I asked was, is this that game? And then it almost happened. We kind of figured that it wouldn't. Both of us picked Alabama to win this game, but man, was it close. I mean, just 4th down and goal from the 30 and
31.
And Jalen Milroe just throws a dime to the back of the end zone. Isaiah Bond, touchdown. And man,
look, let's add to that though. It's not just the 4th down and 31. It was the drama that led up to the 4th down and 31, right? And let's be honest. All right, I've got a funny story for this. So Tennessee and Vanderbilt are playing, right? We're in Neyland Stadium watching Tennessee. But of course, I hate that I'm bringing my phone on stream, but I've got the phone right here as I'm watching the Iron Bowl. And I go to put my phone in the pocket, and I hear like 13 people behind me say, hey, bro, can you put your phone back up? And I'm like, what? What? and this was like before the 4th down, right? So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll put my phone back up. So I'm actually not even checked into the game, right? And I'm watching my boys because who the hell goes to Neyland and then watching another game, dog? So I'm sitting there enjoying the game. And then I kind of look down and I'm like, oh, shit, there's a muff punt, which ironically, funny thing, we'll talk about. Well, we've already talked about it. They muffed a punt exactly when we muffed our freaking punt. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And so then I'm invested. I'm like, all right, I got to watch it. And then I kind of made a joke. I'm like, you know what? I'm getting a phone call, guys. And like everybody got pissed off at me. And I'm just sitting there clowning with them. But yeah, man, I was sitting there. I didn't even realize, like, I tried to throw out the show. I was like, hey, guys, now is a bad time to say that I got a podcast. Like, y'all can tune in and listen. Yeah. But no, it was just funny, man. Everybody was so invested. I mean, the hate for Alabama is so real that everybody wanted to watch them lose. And they pulled it out, man. Some more magic in Jordan-Hare, except this time it was against Auburn. When it was 4th down, right, and they called the timeout, they went to commercial break. They come back. I'm like, there's no way. Like it's over. Like, there's no sense in watching it. And then Hugh Freeze probably pulls one of the biggest coaching mistakes ever and only rushes Jalen Milroe with 2 guys. And that will forever haunt. I mean, you're going to see that highlight just like you see the kick 6. You're going to see that highlight from now on in the future in every single hype video for the Iron Bowl because you only brought 2 guys. Inexcusable. For him to be able to plant his feet, throw that ball to the corner exactly where maybe he does that on the run because Jalen Milroe's, he's a good quarterback. But you've got to at least bring 4 people. There's no reason to not. But
also as a defender right there, you can't let an Alabama wide receiver get behind you like that because Jalen Milroe, is he Bryce Young? No, but he is also very accurate when throwing the ball downfield. And you could tell just the way that he dropped it in the breadbasket right there to Isaiah Bond, it was in the perfect spot, but also the Auburn defender was about 3 yards in front of him when the ball got there. You can't let the wide receiver get behind you like that.
But you're asking a guy to guard somebody for 17 seconds. I mean, Jalen Milroe literally just sat there waiting for something to happen, and then, of course, he pulled the trigger.
There was 10 guys back there defending that.
Yeah, so it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable in every way. But regardless, the only reason why a defender has to defend for that long is because he only brought 2 guys. There's no reason for it. That I just thought that was dumb. I mean, when the play happened, before the touchdown even happened, I'm like, you're only bringing 2 guys? Like, what the hell? And then, of course, whatever happened, it happened. And I thought it was funny because, of course, Bama fans are saying, "Hey, Auburn" on Facebook. And I'm like, "Hey, Bama, that was you for 59 minutes. So I don't know why you're talking shit." But, at the end of the day, this was huge for Bama. Obviously, it's huge for Bama to win the Iron Bowl. But that whole "there's a chance" would have just got wiped out if they lost an Iron Bowl.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up too. So, in a way, for the SEC, it's good that Alabama won this game because
absolutely,
if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship, I believe that no matter what, the SEC champion is going to be in the playoffs. I don't believe that the runner-up, all right, let's just use the scenario if Alabama beats Georgia this weekend. I don't think Alabama and Georgia both get in. I believe, it's going to depend on what happens in the other championship games, but I don't believe that both of those get in. I think that just the conference champion will. Now we'll talk about a little bit more.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that after the recap because I got a lot to talk about on that.
But no. Shout out to Auburn though, because they played their hearts out in this game. This is the type of performance you wanted to see from Auburn after the absolute embarrassing loss that they took last week to New Mexico State. They came out, they played their hearts out in this game. Peyton Thorne didn't have a fantastic day, but Auburn did what they needed to in this game to stay in the game. Their defense played well for the majority of the game, held Alabama to 27 points, where they've been putting up 40-plus in most games here lately. So, this is what the Auburn or what the Iron Bowl needs to look like year in and year out. I'm glad that we got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hats off to Auburn. I do have a bone to pick with Alabama, though. Not necessarily Alabama, but a player on Alabama. And I give him credit. Jalen Milroe is playing out of his mind lately. But after that game, there's a clip of him coming off the sideline saying, "Let's go, let's effing go," and whatever. Like, he's heated. He's emotional. They just won a big game. But rather than him going and celebrating that win with his teammates, he has the audacity to say, "Give me the Heisman." What? Look, if you have to tell people to give you the Heisman, you're probably not even going to Atlanta or New York. And what really irks me about that mentality is it was all about him in that moment. It was never about the team. And to hear a player just outright say, crown, like I hated when Milton scored touchdowns yesterday against Vanderbilt, and he's sitting there going, "Crown me." What? A king doesn't crown himself, you numbnuts. Like, look, Milroe, I lost a lot of respect for him in that moment. You never, after a big win, and he did, and he put it all on him. Like, "Hey, Heisman me." Like, no, dude, this was a team win. Yeah, you threw up the game winning, but like your receiver had to catch that. And, your defense only gave up 24 points to keep you in the game when you probably should have scored 30 or 40 points. Like, he had a game. Don't get me wrong. He threw for 259, 2 touchdowns. He ran for 107 yards. But in my opinion, that was wrong on so many levels. He's not really played like a Heisman all year long. Let's not forget, he got benched in week 3 for whatever reason. We have our own idea of why that happened. But, to me, that was kind of selfish and very ignorant and showed his youth a little bit in that moment. But I'm
not going to get into it because I've got a whole big tangent I could go in on this, but I hate the way that sports are at every level now because, when me and you played, there was some of this going on, but, you look back before we started playing, you didn't see a whole lot of this showboating stuff or things like that going on. And now it's one little thing happens and, hey, I got to let everybody know about it. Yeah, I hate that part of sports now. Like I said, that's all I'm going to say about it because I could go on for hours on that right there. But just do what Nick Saban used to say whenever he first got to Alabama. Act like you've been there before.
Exactly.
Act like you have been there before. Act like you've done it numerous times and move on with it. But speaking of moving on, we're an hour and 15 in, and we've still got 3 games to talk about. So let's talk about Florida State and Florida, the battle of the backup quarterbacks. And this one went your way there for a little bit.
I'm going to keep this short and sweet just because the outcome's kind of what I thought it was going to be. I did think that there wasn't going to be a shock in the world if Florida were to win this game, just because I do feel like Jordan Travis is a lot of Florida State's success.
Yes, absolutely.
However, Kirk Herbstreit, and I hate to give him credit, but dude said it perfectly all night long. Not necessarily who's going to be the quarterback to win the game, who's going to be the quarterback to commit that big mistake to lose the game. And unfortunately,
it was Max Brown.
That happened to Florida. And thus you see Florida State getting the big win in the swamp at night. Not easy to do. Big team win for Florida State. I just don't see them as being one of the 4 best teams. Even if they win the ACC championship, they could be 13-0 and miss it. They could miss the playoff. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I just don't see how they're the best team, man. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but that's why I'm not voting.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a little bit. But yeah, Florida State, they ended up pulling it out. You mentioned it right there. The interception for Max Brown, that's what killed it for Florida. Florida State took advantage of it and ended up pulling out the win. I mean, Florida, unfortunately, didn't make a bowl game this year. This is a disappointing season for Florida.
Yeah, it sucks. They finished 5-7. I will go ahead and go on record for everybody watching, by the way, for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. Make sure y'all hit the like button. But I predicted Florida to go 4-8. And the only reason why they didn't go 4-8 is because they beat our Vols. I'm so pissed about it. And I knew we would be all season long. We're going to look back and say, Florida, hey, this is a terrible loss. Let's not forget, though, how brutal their schedule was and how brutal their schedule is going to be next year. One thing I'll give Billy Napier credit for, and in spite of going back to back now, I think 5-7 seasons, is he's been able to recruit. And they have had some decommitments in the last couple of weeks. That's something to keep an eye out on. I think he lost 3 commitments last week.
He did.
So that's actually dropped them, and they were in the top 3, man, and that's now dropped them out of the top 10. That's something to keep a look at because that was something that Billy could kind of hang his hat on. So that's something to look forward to. But for the SEC East, man, it's always nice when Tennessee, Florida, Georgia are at the top, and Florida and Tennessee lately have not really held their end. But I do think at the end of the day, it's Florida. They're not going to stay down long, which is why it hurts even more that Tennessee couldn't get the win when they should have. But
one other thing that I have real quick, we mentioned earlier about Kentucky and Louisville, their spots in their respective conferences. Florida was either 5th or 6th in the ACC East going into this game, playing against the number 1 team in the ACC. And Florida held their own. I know this is a rivalry game. This always happens, but Florida held their own and could have won the game had they not made that mistake and thrown the interception.
Yeah, but folks are still going to look at, like, analysts, broadcasters, whatever. They're going to be like, ACC's better. Look at this. But whatever, dude. I'm not even worried about it. I think the Swamp's going to be okay. It just hurts right now. Of course, it's going to. Because this is actually going to hurt them in recruiting. When you can't recruit your own state because you got Miami, you got Florida State, you got UCF, who's kind of making a name, dude. I don't know, but let's keep this thing rolling. We got Georgia Tech, ended up being a very tight game. Georgia's defense was getting ran up and down on in this game, but overall they got the win. A win is a win in rivalry week, and they get it. They win by 8 points, 31-23. I don't have much to say on that. I didn't watch it, but I do know that I was kind of tuning in and out. Georgia Tech ran on Georgia, which was kind of surprising.
They did. I mean, every once in a while, the JV team hangs with the varsity team whenever you have the inter-squad scrimmage there. But
right.
But yeah, I mentioned it at the beginning of the year that Georgia didn't look like they were as good in the run game on defense as they have been in years past. Their secondary is still elite, but and that defensive front is still elite as well. But they're not to the level that they have been in the past few years, which is why you saw Georgia Tech have success in the run game this year. You saw other teams this year have success in the run game against Georgia. But either way, I mean, Georgia did just enough. Is this considered the one game that Carson Beck, he had that down game? Is this that one down game that he has this year?
100%. And this is where you want it to come.
Exactly.
Because he was so inaccurate. He went 13-20 for 175 yards, had a touchdown and an interception. This is 100% one of his worst performances of the year. And it, of course, came right after a big game against Tennessee. You kind of felt like there may be a fall off, but then again, it's Georgia Tech. You kind of thought maybe he just run up the score. But no, Sean Carpenter brought it up. He's very surprised that it was this close of a game. And honestly, it was this close of a game. Like, it's not like it was that hidden score that kind of made this a close game, right? Like, it even though I think they were up 31-13 at one point. However, Georgia Tech was still moving the ball. Like, it's not like it was just like a total throttling, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But Robert mentions to our last point about Florida and Arkansas having the toughest schedule. I do want to throw that in there because he's right. Yeah. And that's why their schedules, and we predicted that. I mean, you thought Sam Pittman would be fired this year because of it. So no, but Georgia at the end of the day gets the win, and they've got a lot to play for, man, and they've got to win. If they don't want a stressful December, man, they need to win, because there is a world out there where the committee doesn't really care about eye test or care about the best division in football. They may just take the undefeateds. And if you're not undefeated at the end of the championship weekend, you may not get in. And I can't believe I'm saying this, because usually it all takes care of itself. But this year, man, we've not really had that chaotic weekend, and it could come. It could come on this championship Saturday, dude.
Yep, you're absolutely right. So let's get to our last game of the weekend here. This is Clemson taking on South Carolina. The final score in this was 16-7. This was an ugly ball game.
And it shouldn't even been close, dude. South Carolina, I think, was like 0 for 10 at one point in third down conversions. God bless, dude.
I actually cut this game off after the first couple of minutes. For a little bit. I came back to it once I saw the score was 10-7, but I cut it off because in the first 3 plays of the game for South Carolina, there was a big completion to Xavier Legette, and then it was a fumble that was scooped and scored by Clemson. And then the very first play of their second possession, Spencer Rattler goes deep and throws an interception. I was like, well, this ball game is over with, so I cut it off. But
I think you got to credit South Carolina's defense for keeping them in the game.
Their defense played very well. But also Clemson isn't the team that they have had in the past, but Clemson still had a good day overall. But South Carolina's defense yesterday bent but didn't break for the most part.
No, absolutely. This was just an ugly game. I mean, there's not really much to take away from it. South Carolina, I'm surprised, even had enough players to finish the game. Injuries have been a big issue for South Carolina, but they found a way to finish. Max Anderson, I think, is like literally their only scholarship running back. maybe Joyner. I can't remember if there was another one. Braswell, maybe. It's pretty wild. I think Luke Doty's kind of like their utility guy because he's a quarterback. He could be a wide receiver. He could be a tight end, just depending on where they line him up at. They had to use every one of them. And unfortunately, it still wasn't enough. What's crazy? Spencer Rattler completed 16 of 32. Very inaccurate, which is very unlike Spencer Rattler. Even with the lack of protection this man has had, he has found a way to complete the football, which is insane. Mm-hmm. This time he couldn't do it. And if it wasn't his running back or Xavier Legette, he only completed 5 passes that were not named Max Anderson or Xavier Legette. And 3 of the completions he got to Anderson was for only 2 yards. So, I mean, just total lack of anything unless it was Legette and Spencer Rattler. And at the end of the day, that's just not enough, especially when they're on the very real possibility of losing both of those guys next year. I don't know what the future holds for South Carolina, but Cade Klubnik and Clemson, again, not the prettiest of games. I mean, he only threw for 100 yards on 15 of 27. Didn't even have a touchdown throwing the ball. He had an interception, actually.
Will Shipley had a good day on the ground, though, and I forget. Let's see, I've got it right here. The other running back, he had a good day.
Maffa.
Yeah.
Maffa. But I'm trying to figure out, was it a – hang on. Whoa. Yeah, it was the fumble return was the only touchdown that Clemson had. I mean, that's rough, dude.
You're right.
Yeah. There's 0 touchdowns. Like Clemson or South Carolina's defense played so good for their offense to just not, and it ultimately costed them the game. This is a gut-wrenching blow for South Carolina because this was their – I'm not saying this as a salty Tennessee fan. This was their Super Bowl, and for them to lose it like that, it sucks because you lost. Now you're not bowl eligible. Now you can't have the bragging rights to the state. Like everything that could have went wrong in this game went wrong, and except for the defense, really.
So let's have this conversation real quick. Because we brought it up. So we said that if Shane Beamer beats Clemson and wins this Super Bowl here, we said that would salvage this mediocre season that South Carolina had. So is Shane Beamer on the hot seat going into next season? And I want to give you my response to this before you answer.
Shane Beamer is not on the hot seat for next year.
And I agree with that. And I'll give you my reason. I think it is because he has overachieved since he got there. He got there the same time that Josh Heupel got to Tennessee. He has overachieved in his first 2 seasons in South Carolina. And I think this is just a little stumbling block for him. Now, I don't think that his ceiling at South Carolina is, 10-2, 11-1, maybe not even 9-3. But I think he is a solid 7-5, 8-4 year in and year out. And this year was just a stumbling block for him, along with all those injuries, especially on the offensive line that South Carolina suffered this year. I think that this is just a low point for him. I don't think that he is a consistent, 5-7, 6-6 type coach. I think he's going to be sitting year in and year out somewhere around 7-5, 8-4.
I'm not going to go that far because I don't necessarily know if Shane Beamer is proven enough to me to say that he is that good of a coach. I just think it's too soon. I think it's too soon to get rid of a coach that, obviously loves South Carolina, is a great players relations kind of guy, and they have been hit with injury. I mean, if he got fired right now, he could literally say, okay, but this is what I had to deal with. And if you look at the roster, literally over 60% of their guys are hurt. I mean, that's not an excuse. I get that. But, that's something where depth can really help. And if he has another season or two of recruiting to help build that depth, that'll control this from ever happening again. I mean, look at us, man. Our wide receiver core was decimated this year. And that was only from losing 2 guys. So, I mean, that's where depth's going to be able to help. South Carolina needs to hit the transfer portal hard this offseason and rebuild that to keep from that happening again. But, man, this has been a long recap show for about an hour and a half. Let's go ahead and let's talk about Championship Saturday, dude. We've got a freaking heck of a slate for you guys. And if you want to talk about the first one, because I don't know if we're going to talk about the SEC first or how you want to handle it, but we're going to talk about all of them.
Well, let me give a quick recap. So last week, Skylar and I both went 7-2. We both missed the Kentucky win over Louisville, and that's unfortunate because, we're SEC guys. But Skylar missed he picked the upset of Florida over Florida State. I picked the South Carolina upset over Clemson. Both of those were our upset picks of the week, and unfortunately, we missed those respective games. So both of us finished 7-2, bringing Skylar's overall record to 96-24. I am sitting at 93-19. So I'm still 3 games back. And Championship Saturday this week, we're going to pick each of the Power 5 conference championship games. We will start with the SEC because we are an SEC podcast here. So we've got Georgia against Alabama. This is in Atlanta at 4 Eastern on CBS. Skylar, what say you for this game? Alabama is a 5.5-point dog in this game.
Michael just needs every opportunity to come back that he can get. He won't admit that on air, but that's the only reason why we're doing this. I mean, I'm crowned the king of predictions, baby. Like, I don't understand. Thanks to my upset picks that actually did work out.
That's the thing that sucks is because I'm 3 games back and I haven't got a darn upset pick game right all year long.
And I've had 2, baby. Yeah. It's all good, man. I will get you a violin to play later to cry about it. Anyways,
on our sound card here, I don't know.
All right, dude. We got Georgia playing Alabama. I'm gonna keep this short and simple. Georgia needs to avoid disaster and they need to win. This is going to sound really dumb, probably. I don't care. If Alabama wins against Georgia, I don't even know if we get an SEC team in the playoff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're crazy. It's the SEC championship. They have to get in. Well, the problem is you got other undefeated teams that could stay undefeated. And how could you put in a one-loss team? I know how. Don't treat me like I don't know. I know how you could do it because the team just is better. SEC is better. I get that. The problem is the committee. I don't trust the committee. All right. Never have, never will. And at the end of the day, man, you got Oregon, Washington. That's going to be a one-loss team in probably because I think Oregon's going to win that. But anyways, give me Georgia.
I'm going to take Georgia as well. I can see a path to Alabama winning this ball game. But I talked with my dad earlier before we went live. I think Georgia is the more well-rounded team because he said it earlier. You look at Georgia, and each and every week it is a new guy that is winning that ball game. It's not one guy each and every week. And I know that Alabama, they've got guys that have won it in different weeks. But if Jalen Milroe is not playing well, then Alabama is not having success. So I think that we said it earlier. Carson Beck's game this past week against Georgia Tech, that was his one down game this year. And you said it. It comes at the perfect time. I think Carson Beck is on lock the rest of the season.
Let's not forget Brock Bowers was out for that game. So I think he got nicked up.
I did not realize that he was out.
Yeah, he got nicked up against Tennessee, I think, again, which I hate that more than anything in the world, which I thought he came back way too soon to begin with. But
I agree.
So I think he was dressed and ready to play if needed, but he didn't come in to my knowledge.
Also, Ladd McConkey didn't play yesterday either. He wasn't even dressed.
No, which makes me think that they're resting him for this game right here. I mean, that's kind of where I was getting at. And let me say this. I mean, I hate to ever bet against Nick Saban because I think you're just asking to lose money if you do so. If Bama finds a way to beat Georgia, it is strictly on coaching, in my opinion. I think Nick Saban's got to coach his best game ever and put his guys in the best position to win, whether that's schematically or strategically, calling timeouts at the right time. I'm going to need, and we're going to see the best in the best. And that's why I'm really excited about this matchup. Even as a Tennessee fan, I hate it because somebody's going to win that I don't want them to win, but at least somebody's going to lose that I would love to see lose. So, I don't know, man. I am going to root for Georgia in this sense just because it would be very chaotic if Alabama wins where, hey, maybe two SEC teams do make it. But I think it's more than likely two SEC teams actually don't make it if Bama finds a way to win this game.
I still think that an SEC champion makes it regardless. I get your point there, and I can see a path that they don't put an SEC champion in. But I think that, if Georgia wins, they're in regardless. But if Alabama wins, I still think that the gauntlet that Alabama went through this year, because they played a lot of tough games against tough teams. So I think that Alabama will still find their way into the playoffs. But let's just see what conference championship weekend has in store for us, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more next week from there.
Now, let's talk about the next game, though, man. We got the Pac-12 championship that may be the most watched game in all of the championship, which it's not even Saturday. It's just championship weekend. This game's actually been played on Friday on the opening day of December. We got Oregon, Washington, 8 o'clock ABC, in the rematch in which everybody has said Oregon's the better team, and we're going to get a chance to see it. There's people out there that truly believe Oregon can win this game by multiple touchdowns. What direction are you going with it?
I am also going to go with Oregon here. I'm going to go with everybody else. I'm not going to sit here and say that Washington win earlier this year against Oregon was a fluke, because I think that it was just the perfect recipe in that game for Washington to win the game. And, Oregon just had a little bit of bad luck with the missed field goal there, and it did not miss by much in that game earlier this year. But I think when you look at the way, I think it was Josh Pate talked about trends. Oregon is trending up, and I'm not going to say Washington is trending down, but the way that the teams have been playing here lately, Washington is they're staying right there on that same line where Oregon is trending up with their gameplay ever since that Washington game. So I'm going to go with the trends here, and I'm going to say Oregon wins this game. I'm not going to say that they cover the 8.5 because I do think that it is a close game, but I do pick Oregon to win this game, and they get their way into the playoffs.
It's not crazy that Caleb Williams and USC is absolutely nowhere to be talked about in the Pac-12 right now.
I didn't think that they would be. I've been saying all along that Caleb Williams and USC are overrated because their defense is just god awful.
You want to hear something crazy that I'm going to say on the air, but I'm not betting any money on it?
Okay.
Lincoln Riley's getting offers from A&M. I have no insider information on that. I have zero. But I'm just saying that would be a Lincoln Riley thing to do right there. No, I am going. I'm a big believer in everything taking care of itself, but I think everybody's right on this. I truly think if Oregon Washington play again, Oregon's going to win. They do look like the more complete football team they have all year, even in the daggum game. I mean, they had a fourth down that they could have converted or stopped. I can't remember, but they failed to do so. And then they had the fumble, and the missed field goal. Give me Oregon by a mile. I do honestly think that this could be. I hope not for viewership's sake, which, for what it's worth, I don't know, but I do think Oregon could win this by multiple scores. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see the chaotic weekend this weekend.
Yeah, I think we could. So let's move on to the third game here. This is actually the first game of the day on Saturday. We have the Big 12 championship game between Oklahoma State and Texas. Oklahoma State is a 13.5-point dog in this game. Skylar, what say you?
Yeah, how big does that Oklahoma loss feel to Texas right now? They could have finished the regular season 12-0. 1,000% would have probably been the number 1 or number 2 ranked team in the nation because, everybody loves Texas. So if they were undefeated right now with the win over Alabama, how do you not have them up there? But that Oklahoma loss, that hurt big time, especially with Oklahoma losing another one. I think Oklahoma's lost multiple games now. Oklahoma State about lost last weekend or yesterday. So I'm gonna stick with my guns. Texas looks so good against Texas Tech, man. Just absolutely routed them. I think that shows me that they were not overlooking Texas Tech in any way because they pretty much knew they were locked in the championship game. But give me Texas over Oklahoma State, and dude, this scenario is going to be wild. But man, it's going to be hard to keep a 12-1 Big 12 champion Texas out of the Final Four.
Yep, I agree with you. And Texas looked really good against Texas Tech yesterday, but Texas in the past few weeks before then, they also they would get some big leads, and they looked a little bit shaky, especially towards the end. And this is a team at the beginning of the year that would look shaky towards the beginning of the game, but then just put it on at the end. So Texas has been kind of an inconsistent team overall this year, but they've still won ball games. I mean, they've only lost that one game this year against Oklahoma. Oklahoma State on the other side, they started off shaky this year. I mean, had a big loss at home to South Alabama. I think it was like 31-7 or something like that. But then they've also, they went on a stretch this year where they looked really good. And Texas in the past, they've had a history of not doing what they needed to do in the big moments. And as much as I hate to say this, I think I'm going to go with Mike Gundy and the Oklahoma State Cowboys to pull the upset this weekend in the Big 12 championship game.
Somebody wants 2 teams in the SEC championship or in the playoff. No, I got you. Heck yeah. I mean, I'm for it, man. That's why they play the game. I mean, you're going to see some upsets happen on Championship Saturday, and it's going to help the committee out a lot. I can promise you they are wanting some upsets to happen because if they don't, they're going to just go ahead and go to 12 teams. Like, there's no way you could just get forward. They're going to take heat no matter what direction they go. But I like it, man. And you got to make up some games. So I understand why you have to kind of go on a limb here and take Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy. I think they could do it. Texas is very beatable.
I agree. And that's really the only reason I'm taking it is because, I mentioned Texas in the big moments in the past, they have not gotten over that hump like they needed to. And even sometimes this year, it looked like they weren't going to get over that hump, but they did. I just don't. I wonder how much longer that this, I guess, magic, you would say, can keep itself up without Texas dropping a game. And I really think that this weekend it could happen against Oklahoma State.
Well, maybe he's just turning that program around to where it's not magic anymore. It's just expectation. I don't know. That's something to keep an eye on.
That could be right. I think that Sarkisian was a great hire for Texas, and I think he's going to have a lot of success even when they get to the SEC.
Yeah, they needed an offensive guy, and so I'd fully, I'm built in or bought into that hire. Let's talk about the next one. What is it? The Big Ten?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the one snoozer of the weekend. We have Michigan at Iowa. Well, I guess technically it's neutral site, but Michigan against Iowa. Iowa is a 22.5-point dog to Michigan in this game.
I just don't think there's going to be that many points scored. I'm not saying that as in like a hater to Michigan. They just got a big win against Ohio State. Iowa's got a daggum good defense. The problem is they ain't got a offense whatsoever. And let's be honest, Michigan may be the most beatable team. I get it. They just beat Ohio State. They may be the most beatable team there is. I don't think Ohio State was a good team, just personally. Michigan, man, their passing attack ain't the greatest. It's there when they need it, but I don't see Michigan ever just pulling away and beating a team by like 50. They couldn't do it against Penn State. They couldn't do it against Ohio State. I look for this game to be very low score. I would be shocked if either team scores 30 points. Well, I know Iowa's not. I'd be shocked if Michigan scores 30 points. So I'm going to take Iowa to cover, but Michigan should definitely get this win.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, if we were playing this year with the rules of, you get points for a cover, then I think this is 100% the game that I would take this weekend because I think you're right. I think Iowa covers, but I think it's going to be like 24-3, 24-6 type game, something like that. Michigan wins, but Michigan is going to win this ball game this weekend. And let's have this conversation real quick because we mentioned the two SEC schools. Is it possible that you get two SEC teams into the playoffs? Is it possible that you have two Big Ten schools get in? Do you think that Michigan and Ohio State both can get in?
No, sure.
I don't think so either.
The resume is just not there. That was a playoff game through and through. They don't have any marquee wins outside of Penn State because the Big Ten is just so bad, especially the Big Ten West. Big Ten East really ain't that good outside of Penn State. But the Big Ten East is just so top heavy and unfortunately makes Penn State look bad when they play Ohio State, Michigan. But I just think in general, man, I don't think there's enough meat on the bone because you didn't beat your biggest rival. To me, no, I don't think there's a chance. I think they got very lucky because of Tennessee losing to South Carolina. That's the only reason why they got 2 in last year.
I'll agree with you on that. And I think that you're right. I think that it's only Michigan that would get in this year. But, if you would have asked me after the Notre Dame game, I would say that, if Ohio State wins out, I think, other than the Michigan game, if Michigan was to beat Ohio State, I think that you could still have that possibility because of that resume building win against Notre Dame. But after the way Notre Dame season went,
it's not good.
Not as big anymore. So I don't think that the resume lines up for two Big Ten teams to get in either. So I think it's Michigan in, and that's the only Big Ten school that gets in.
I understand, and I agree. Let's talk about the ACC championship, man. We got Louisville, Florida State. Florida State got a big win in the swamp against Florida. Yeah, it was a little ugly, but the defense really stepped up when they needed to. Louisville, on the other hand, just dropped a doozy to Kentucky to really take off a lot of meat on this game. However, it's championship Saturday. What say you? Florida State is without Jordan Travis, of course. I mean, he's out for the rest of the season, rest of the year. Hopefully that he gets good or, healthy enough for either next year or gets ready for the NFL combine, whatever. But, what say you in this game?
So I think that that's the story of it right there. I think that Jordan Travis plays, and this is a Florida State win, and Florida State is undefeated going into the playoffs. But I think with Jordan Travis out, I forget who the backup is that played yesterday for Florida State. You might know his name, but I don't think that he can just pull it out for Florida State in this game. I don't think that there's enough around him that could get them the win. And I think that Louisville is ticked off after the game yesterday against Kentucky. So I'm going to take Jake Plummer and the Louisville Cardinals to beat Florida State and knock them out of the playoffs this year. I think Louisville is going into this game playing spoiler.
Tate Rodemaker, which on the season that he's played, he's racked up 510 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's been kind of the guy that they've really needed to step up, obviously, when they needed to. And he's not really committed that massive mistake. And I think he's got a really good defense that as long as he keeps doing that, they could absolutely win out. The problem is, and I hate that you did it, is because I'm actually going with Louisville too. I don't think Louisville can play any worse than what they just did against Kentucky. And that whole thing about me talking about, things are going to start taking care of themselves. Let's be honest, man. If Florida State were to win out and they're undefeated, absolutely they deserve to be in the top 4. However, let's be honest with ourselves. Are they
one of the 4 best teams?
That's what I'm saying, dude. And so I don't even want the committee to have to face that type of an issue. So, yeah, I'm going to be rooting against it. I'm going to be pulling for Louisville to kind of take care of some business and hopefully make this Final Four a little bit less foggy and get Florida State out of there. If Jordan Travis was still here, by the way, and I hate to make this all about one player, but then, yeah, maybe, because now I know teams are at their best.
Yes.
But Florida State is not at their best. And I get it. Ohio State had their 3rd string run it for them in 2014. Congratulations to them. And I guess for that reason, maybe they should be in the top 4. That's why I'm not making the decision. At the end of the day, I would rather see 4 teams truly at their best go at it. And that's why I am, and I hate to do this because I know you're probably pulling for them to try to make up a point. But no, I mean, I was pulling for Louisville this entire time. So give me Louisville. I think they actually beat Florida State in the ACC championship to keep an ACC team from going undefeated this season.
Yeah. So real quick, this is not confirmed, but this just in from ESPN. Pete Thamel put this. Texas A&M is in discussions with Duke coach Mike Elko to become the next football coach. So I mentioned that game back early, or that name back earlier. Once Jimbo got fired, I think that is going to be a great hire for Texas A&M if they get him. I just don't know if that's the right choice for Mike Elko because he's kind of got it. He's kind of in that Mark Stoops type seat right there where he's kind of got it made at Duke. The expectations are not for them to go, 10-2, 11-1, win championships year in and year out, but you want to sit at that 7-5, 8-4 record so that you know that your job is safe. So, like I said, I think this is going to be a great hire for A&M if they do officially hire him. But I just don't know how great of a move it is for Mike Elko as far as, the expectations being so different.
Yeah, I think I mentioned him as well in one of our last episodes. That's why I kind of threw up the vol signs for no reason other than to think that I was actually right about something. But no, I think Mike Elko would be a great hire because I think his stock is probably the highest it's going to be for himself. How realistic is it going to be at Duke to keep having those 10-win seasons? I don't know. Maybe. But I think at the end of the day, some people do want to coach in front of 110,000 people. And maybe that's something that he wants to do. And to think, if he could do it at a basketball school, could you imagine what he could do it with the 12th man at College Station? I don't know.
With all the resources and all that he's got at Texas A&M, I think that he could be that's why I say I think it's a great hire for A&M.
It's got to be something. It's got to be somebody when they hire them. It's got to be somebody looking for the pressure. Mike Elko's done all this with no pressure whatsoever. And I think maybe that's why he's looking about, getting out of there. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have pressure on yourself just a little bit, are you ever going to get better? And the answer is no. Look at Mark Stoops.
Yep.
Dude's had zero pressure. And dude will never win in the SEC East as long as he's the head coach at Kentucky. Hate me all you want to. It's a fact, dude. And I think I would actually respect Mike Elko a little bit because, one, he's going to be the highest paid coach probably. Let's just be honest. It's A&M. And two, he's going to have that pressure. If he doesn't do something in the first 2 or 3 years, he's not going to last long. Like, let's just be honest. So he's going to be, if that is the case, if that is confirmed, which if it's from Pete Thamel, it's pretty freaking good source. That he's stepping into the plate, and that's going to be fun to watch. A&M, we will have to play every other year going forward. So hopefully they don't get too good too quick.
Yeah. So. And real quick before we move to our upset picks, a couple of comments here. Robert, back earlier after we were talking about Clemson and South Carolina, he said, man, wish the Gamecocks could have won. Wanted to see another epic post-game meltdown for Dabo Sweeney and us.
I seen that earlier. I just laughed. I didn't want to read it out, but yeah.
Yeah, but then he also says right here, I thought Barry Odom would be a good fit for Texas A&M. He has prior SEC experience, and he's having an incredible year at UNLV. And, that's one of the names that until you mentioned it right there, Robert, I didn't really think about him, but you're right. I think that could have been a good hire. And, the route –
Josh Heupel.
Yeah,
Josh Heupel coached under him.
Yeah, so the route that Texas A&M is having to take right now, because you knew they weren't going to get one of those big splash hires because of the payout they just had to give Jimbo Fisher. So they were going to have to go with maybe a bigger, mid-major name, or even, Mike Elko is a great one. He's not just a top Power 5 coach, but he's still coaching at that Power 5 level, having success.
It's almost like the new generation. I mean, the same thing Tennessee did, man. We even though we had the money, I think, we went down and grabbed a coach from UCF that everybody kind of doubted, like, oh, could he do it in the SEC? Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, he can. So I think you're starting to see kind of like that new generational type of recruiting for a coach is, all right, maybe we don't necessarily need Ryan Day. I cannot believe that name was even thrown out there. There's no shot.
There's no way
leaving Ohio State. He might get fired for losing to Michigan 3 years in a row, which, okay, maybe. But he, on his terms, ain't going to leave Ohio State to go to A&M. Makes no sense. People, it's those people that come out with those articles that makes me wonder how the hell they ever got a job. But, no, I think Barry Odom could be a name. I just, at the end of the day, I kind of, and we said this, man, Mike Elko, he could be that guy. I don't know. That's just... Well, he's done remarkable things at Duke.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll find out. So now let's get to our upset picks of the week. I mentioned last week, Skylar and I, neither one got ours. Skylar picked Florida to upset Florida State. I picked South Carolina to upset Clemson. Unfortunately, neither one of those happened. But Skylar, do you have your upset pick for this week, or do you need me to read out some lines again?
No, I actually do have my upset pick of the week. It's kind of unfortunate because you chose them outright. Because we have to choose from the SEC championship game, or not SEC championship, but we have to choose from the championship games, don't we?
Yeah, but you don't have to pick one of these five that we've got. You've also got some of the mid-major ones, like you've got Troy and App State. That's Troy's a 6.5 point favorite over App State.
Well, then give me App State over Troy. Bam, done.
Okay. So App State
plays so much better as an underdog, dude. It's not even close.
Yep, I agree. And honestly, if it wasn't for the game that I picked, I was probably going to take that one. But I chose Oklahoma State outright to beat Texas in the picks, and I'm going to double down on it and say Oklahoma State wins over Texas. That is my upset pick of the week this week.
I like that. I like that a lot. That would have been mine, but I'm not man enough to pick them outright, and I don't like doing both. So I applaud you for backing that up. That means you're fairly confident in that pick. I'm fairly confident in mine now that you told me that Appalachian State was the underdog, because I'm telling you, man, App State is known for coming out of nowhere and beating the biggest programs you've ever heard of, like Tennessee.
Yeah,
I'm joking. We won. We
won, but App State did beat Texas A&M last year. So.
Absolutely. They beat North Carolina last year as well. So I'm telling you, which North Carolina's kind of tumbled bad, but no, I like that a lot for our upset pick of the week. And guys, we apologize that this has almost been a 2-hour-long show, but it's the finale, guys. Like, I don't know. There was just a lot to talk about. Yeah. So,
and guys, Michael, we are going to keep doing this show through the off season. We're going to talk some basketball. We're also,
that's right.
We mentioned earlier, we are going to go through our our SEC predictions. You know, we gave out predictions on TikTok for what we thought the season was going to be at the beginning. We're going to compare those to the actual results this year, and we might actually start that next week since we'll just have the Georgia-Bama game to recap. We'll talk the bowls once we get the bowl picks out. We'll be able to talk about SEC games in the bowls, stuff like that. So we are going to continue to do the show. We might take a couple of Sundays off, coming up just to give ourselves a little bit of a break and, spend some time with family. I know we got Christmas Eve this year is on a Sunday. So, depending on what the families do, we'll discuss off air what we're going to do. We might just decide to take that week for, family, stuff like that. But we'll try to let you guys know whenever we do the show, what's going to happen that next week. And we'll get it out on our TikToks, stuff like that to keep you guys in the know about it. But, we are.
Robert wants us to pick every bowl game, dude.
See,
I'm not that good, Robert.
All the SEC bowl games.
Oh, the SEC. Okay.
Do that. Yeah, bowl games. Yeah, I'm not that good with it. I don't know all these other teams well enough.
I'm about to take a shot, but it's not going to be that many thanks to South Carolina and Florida and Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. Never mind. Yeah, it's going to be a great season, guys, and I'm going to let you close it out. But, man, I've had a great time, and I'm still going to be crowned at the end of it. We can keep doing it as long as you want, but just know I'm going to stay in the lead as it is what it is. But, guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Robert, you've been a real one. Sean, thank you, guys. Anybody else that's watching, I know we've had some lurkers. If y'all would just like the video. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And, man, I'm excited for what the future holds between the Ball Fanatic Show.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We're actually, I teased it a couple weeks ago. We got some things in the works. We're going to work on that this week, and possibly, we could have an announcement come out next week if everything works out. So just be prepared for that. And Robert, I appreciate you. I do think that I'm going to win this with all the bowl picks, but we'll see going forward with it. So guys, have a great week this week. Skylar, hope you get to feeling better. I know you're feeling some better. I'm feeling some better too. Hopefully next week we'll be at 100% once we get back on. So.
That's right, brother. Go Big Orange.
Absolutely. Go Big Orange. Enjoy Championship Saturday this coming weekend, guys.